Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Prevention Live. My name is Daryl Edwards, Director of Prevention Partnership, and today we'll be discussing another important topic in the world of community health issues and prevention. I'd also like to introduce my associate here. Eric, if you could say a few words about yourself.
Sure, be glad to. My name is Eric Edwards, and I am a program coordinator also at Prevention Partnership. I manage the financial literacy training program, and today we're going to have a great show. Glad to be here, Daryl, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, and keep in mind that we are live on the air. If you have a question or comment, feel free to just call right in at the number at the bottom of the screen. Also, I want to give you information here that you can take a look at. Prevention Partnership is at 5936 West Lake Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60644. You can reach us on our website. In the past, we've talked financial literacy. We've talked about our BASSET, our alcohol seller education program. And tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit about parent and child communication skills. I just wanted to mention that even though we're talking about parent and child communication skills, we tend to find at Prevention Partnership communication skills are sort of general. Sometimes we as adults, we think we do great communications. Sometimes we don't even do great communication among ourselves. So please feel free to call in with comments, or questions, and take these important tips that we're going to talk about. Feel free to use them not only with your child, but with your spouses, significant others, family, and friends.
Dale, I got a question. So
Sure.
basically what we're going to be talking about today is basically how I, as a parent, can communicate more effectively with my son or my daughter, like if they're having problems in school, things like that.
Correct. One of the most important things for parents to do is to communicate effectively with their child. Depending on the age of the child, and we'll talk a little bit about that, they communicate a little bit differently than we do as adults. Sometimes we as adults don't listen as much. We really get into the habit of doing all of the talking and not enough listening, or consider the fact that they have issues and things too.
Yeah.
One of the things that also that I want you to pay very close attention to is the fact that we want to learn ways to get your child to trust you as a friend and as a resource for help. I think this is very important. We tend to forget that we as parents are one of, or should be, considered one of our best friends, for our children. But many times today, especially in this age of everyone with devices and cell phones and things like that, internet and Facebook, sometimes our children don't consider us as parents as a resource for help or as a friend. We tend to get to be the person who's always telling them what not to do and what they are doing wrong and so on. Very so often, we'll particularly in the teenage years or early preteen years, or your child feels comfortable going to you with a problem. When I was a parent, I've never had any of my kids come up to me and ask me things like, oh, well, some of the kids were smoking cigarettes at school. Is that something I don't think a lot of kids would feel comfortable coming up with their parents. They should feel that they should be able to come to their parents with both positive and negative things, and then be able to get the right information and not feel that they will be immediately sanctioned because of a question that they may just not know about.
Right, and you're right. And I think the key to that, Daryl, too, is, us as parents really understanding our kids and, really getting to know some of the things that they deal with, like on a daily basis,
right.
With their peers in school. And really for us to take a step back as adults and get in that time machine and go back 20, 30, 40 years ago and say, I remember when I was that age and, some of the things that, I dealt with. It'd be really cool, though, if I had somebody, especially my parent, mom or dad, you know, a big brother or a grandparent that I really could talk to instead of letting all that, you know, frustration and all that anxiety just build up inside me, you know?
Right, right. So communication is very important. I want to bring to your attention a couple things here. When we talk about communicating positively with children, and this is adults also as well, but particularly with children, communication can be both nonverbal and it can be and or verbal. So it can be either a nonverbal and or verbal. I'll give you an example, Eric. If we were trying to communicate and you would ask me a question and let's say it was something that I didn't want to do.
Okay.
I could either say, you know what, Eric, you know, this is something that I really don't want to do, or I could say nothing and go,
Well, definitely that body language is, you don't want to do it.
correct. That's an example of nonverbal communication. Sometimes our children can come to us and just tug on our sleeve, you know, and go, you know, Mama, Daddy, can I ask you a question? And your body language is like, don't bother me now.
Yeah,
I'm
you'll
busy.
tend to tuck away. Like,
Right.
oh, well, you know, I'm busy right now.
Exactly.
You know, maybe later. Yeah,
Exactly.
You're right.
Exactly. So, you know, some things simply, instead of just, or you watching TV and you just like, yeah, I'm listening, Your body language isn't showing that you're actually listening and communicating.
Right.
So communication can be both verbal and it can be nonverbal. Communication can also be positive or negative. And we got to watch how we do things, either positive, negative, because, you know, one thing we also should know is that children learn by watching their parents and others.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Good and bad.
Yep, good and
Good
bad.
and
So we must realize that when we're communicating, especially with children and younger children, whether we're communicating either positively or negatively. I'll give you an example. I remember one time my daughter had did something that had displeased me, and I was very stern and sort of argumentative, you know, at my daughter. You know, don't you do that again. And then several days later, I would notice that my son would start taking on that very same attitude. Mm-hmm. If his sister did something that he didn't like, he went to that scolding, like, you know, don't you do that. And then now I was into the things like, don't talk to your sister. And I'm pretty sure he's like, well, you talk to her like
Exactly,
that.
yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I'm an adult. You can't. And we get into showing either positive or negative bad examples of our communication, and then we wonder what's wrong with our kids.
Right, exactly.
A lot of times they've learned it
from us.
From us.
Right, so we need to do a better job as parents to
Exactly.
make sure that when we do communicate to our children, we want to be stern, but we also want to be, you know, understanding and cordial and make sure that they understand what we really need them to do, but at the same time, you know, be you know, understanding of what their situation is too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's very important. Let's take a look at a couple different other things we want to remember. And this is going to be our first tip. We're going to have a couple tips, but we'll start with tip one. This is a very important one. You want to start communicating effectively when your children are young. You don't want to wait until they're like your preteen years or teenage years to sit down and start talking about things. Whether it's something you know, positive or negative, you want to start talking about the kids when they're young. For example, we look in the picture here, and we have a pretty young a child here, and it would seem just from again, the communication could be verbal, nonverbal. Obviously, we can see from this picture here that this child may or may not, I suspect, be non-verbally communicating that there may be a problem or that something needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
So one of the things we need to do is start looking for those verbal and nonverbal.
Yeah.
For instance, if you your child comes home from school and you say, "How was your day at school?" and they sort of go, look at their feet and go, well, it was sort of okay.
Yeah, drop that head down.
Right.
Kind of put the hands in the pocket, shrug the shoulders type thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's all right.
Right. Maybe they're showing you a nonverbal, that things weren't okay.
Yeah.
So being a good communicator, you may want to pick up on that and say, are you sure everything went okay?
Yeah.
Is anything would you like to talk about?
Yeah.
And so on. So that's very important that we start when our children are young. The younger you start, the more they'll be used to coming to you for information and questions later on when things get real serious. Not that younger kids can't have serious issues, but when you start really getting into those preteen years, when you start dealing with issues about like smoking, or they may be drugs like marijuana, fights in school, things like that, drinking,
stuff like that,
things like that.
Sex with even
Yep.
kids,
Yep,
like teenagers,
sex
things like that.
and things like that. Stealing, crime, gangs, things like that. You don't want to be just now trying to convince your kid that they can talk to you.
Right, exactly.
And they should know from early on that they can come to you with these issues, and you will give them honest and fair advice.
Right.
In
I
their
agree.
best.
And guys out there, if you had any questions, the number is at the bottom of the screen. You can call me, Eric, or Daryl at 312-738-1060. So
Right.
give us a call.
Right, and also keep in mind too that after the show goes off, we still can be reached by phone and by our website during the week when we're not actually on the air. Okay, let's look at tip number 2. Communicate at your children's level. When a parent communicates with their children, it's important for you to come down to your children's level. With younger children, it can be used, you can just simply use simple words. For older children, sometimes you may have to break down the situation into simpler concepts. They may not understand real advanced concepts, so it may be concepts or it could just be simple words. For instance, young children are more likely to understand a direction such as no hitting your sister, as opposed to saying it is not acceptable to hit your sister. You just keep it simple, don't do it, versus it is not acceptable. For a younger child to consider, I guess, the abstract concept of what's acceptable and what not acceptable may be a little bit too much. So sometimes you have to keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Like the old saying we used to have in our days, you just have to break it down.
Yeah. Keep it real.
Keep it real. Break it
real.
down, to something that they can understand.
Right, exactly.
And also not just with communicating with your children, but also with adults or other family members in the house. Breaking it down to another person's level is one of the easiest things you can do. And then as the conversation goes on, you can sort of escalate it up into, more sophisticated aspects of whatever the discussion is about. But by keeping it simple, you at least know that you get the basic communication across without the person looking and saying, like, what is he or she talking about?
Right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So guys, remember, any questions, give us a call. The number's at the bottom of the screen, 312-738-1060.
Right. Okay, we'll look at another tip. Learn how to really listen. This is one thing I know that I myself sometimes, when I'm trying to communicate, whether it's in conflict or even positively, I find myself not really listening.
Be a good listener. Important.
I'm more into just talking, like I know everything and this is the way it is, and I get into more of a preaching type of thing, and I'm not listening to the other person, especially if the person has a view that I don't necessarily agree with, or maybe I just don't see their side. You will if you practice good listening skills. So you want to stop. It's sort of like we're talking here, about these communication tips. If you notice, we want to listen. So we're offering a person to give in a call. whether you have a question or you may just want to comment. Maybe you just want to throw in a tip or maybe talk about a situation that you've had where communication went good or bad. We're willing to listen. We certainly aren't know-it-alls on this subject. So we're always open to listen. And therefore, in good communication, you got to use some of the same tips. Really learn how to listen to what the other person is saying. Just because you're the parent doesn't mean you're always right.
That's true. So, guys, you got any questions, give us a call, 312-738-1060. Give us a call now. We only have about 10 more minutes.
Okay, and also remember when we go off the air, you can actually go to www.p2online.org, and you can even download this entire PowerPoint presentation. Maybe you need to use this maybe at the parent-teacher meeting, or you're an educator or a social service worker and just want a nice little PowerPoint about communication. You can go to our website. You can download this, and you can also download other topics that we talked about. On our last couple sessions, we've talked about financial literacy. We've also talked about our bartending and server training. And next week we'll have other exciting health topics. And every time we do one of these presentations, we will post them on our website. So that's another resource that we can go, and use when we're not actually on the air. But remember, we're on every week, Thursday, 6 p.m., same time, same channel. Okay. Going back into learning really how to listen. Here are some tips. And a lot of times we don't do this, so we want to keep these in mind. You want to make and maintain eye contact. Maintaining the good eye contact is important. For instance, when I'm talking to you on the screen, I want to look right in the camera, so I'm looking right into your TV set so that you can feel that I am speaking directly to you. If I'm talking with Eric right here, so I want to look, over to Eric and, nod my head and things like that so that he understands that I'm paying attention and that I am actually listening to him. Another thing you want to do, eliminate distractions. One of the things that really bothers me if I was having a conversation, and let's say, for instance, I'm talking now and Eric's sitting there playing on his device, and I'm trying to talk to him, and he's playing on his device.
Or it's ringing.
Yeah, or it's ringing. That's kind of sending a signal that he's not paying attention and that he's not listening.
Right. You got a good point. In today's society, everybody has cell phones, and they're convenient, but they also can be a distraction. So I think you're absolutely right. If you're having a conversation with your child, to show just how important it is, you can say, you know what, son or daughter, give me a second. Let me turn this phone off so we don't get disturbed and put it down.
Right.
So that way I can make sure I can focus on you and give you 100% of my attention.
Right. And it's fair to ask them to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. If you said, okay, we're going to sit here and we're going to talk for a few minutes, let's both of us turn off our cell phones and have some quality time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go quickly with a couple more tips. The last two tips are pretty obvious. Let your children know they have been heard. Just let them know, I hear you, I hear you. For example, you may say, I hear you. So school's been a little rough, and I know the grades have been a little bad, but I know you've been having some rough times. It's a new school, you got new friends, blah, blah, blah. I hear you, I hear you. I hear where you're coming from. So a lot of times you want to know when the child speaks that you let them know that you hear them. Just say it. I hear you. I hear you. Okay. Let's move along. Something else that I want to bring to your attention, and this is tip number 4. Keep the conversations brief, especially with younger children. A lot of times people don't want long, drawn-out conversations. Just try to keep it as brief as possible to get the information across so that people understand. Go right on to another tip. It's okay to express your own feelings So if you're talking to your son or your daughter, and they're expressing, something that you have a concern about, it could be positive or negative, but usually, a negative concern, but it's like, hey, well, son, daughter, Johnny, I really am very upset with you hanging out with those guys down at the basketball court.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about that. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that they're up to something, but, I haven't been introduced. I don't know their parents. And there's been some problems in the community. I want you to let me know if something's going on that I should be aware of. So it's okay to let them know your feelings. You don't have to get angry. Just let them know you're concerned. And this is the reason why you're having this conversation.
Exactly. So, guys, you got any questions, again, give us a call. The number's at the bottom of the screen there, 312-738-1060.
Okay. Moving right along, this is number 6 of 8 tips that we have here. And tip number 6 is a real good one. Regularly schedule family meetings or times to talk. I know when I grew up, we didn't really have family meetings. Things would just get said while we were passing, going in and out of the house, or maybe someone would get pulled over aside. And we really didn't have times to sit down and have family meetings. And I know that a lot in our busy world, we don't even sit down and have dinner together anymore.
Sunday dinner, everybody, all the family get around the dinner table from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Everybody enjoys each other's company. They talk about work, they talk about school, they talk about any problems that they have. So yeah, that's important.
Right. So you want to schedule times like that. You're sitting down there having a meal, you don't have anything else to do but talk about what happened in the day, things that are going on, both good things and bad things.
Right.
Okay, let's remember, we're running real short on time, but if you want this presentation, you can download it here at www.p2online.org, or you can give us a call at the office anytime during the week. Now, we'll look at the last 2 tips here, and then we're going to be out of time. Admit it when you don't know something. One of the most important things you can do is if your child wants to communicate, they want to ask you a question, and you don't know, it's better just to go ahead and say, I don't know. If you would call right now and ask me a question and I don't know, I would go, I don't know. We'll try to find out and get you the information.
Exactly.
Maybe we can go look it up. We can ask somebody else, but I don't know whether make up something and end up wrong.
Exactly.
So,
that's important. That's important. Yeah.
And we'll look again. Finally, tip number 8, try to make your explanations complete. Give as much information as possible. In other words, don't give them a half-baked answer. Go ahead and answer the question completely. If you don't know anymore, then you just go back to the previous tip, number 7, and just say, I don't know. But always try to answer the question completely. Just don't blow it off or say, I don't know, big deal. You want to be able to follow through on that in effective communication. Now, there are a lot more tips. This is just the most that we could do in the 25 minutes or so that we have left, for this program. So if you want more information, I will say once again, go to www.p2online.org. This is simply a PowerPoint from a larger presentation. There's a multi-page document on this stuff that you can download. So it looks like that we are about out of time now. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and until next week, thank you for tuning in to Prevention Partnership Talking Live. Have a great evening.
Have a good night.
All righty. Bye-bye.